Absolute value. This lesson is going to review absolute value and how it is used on the ACT College Entrance Exam. Chances are you will see a couple of questions that test your knowledge of absolute value. Okay, let's talk about absolute value. What is absolute value? Well, by definition, it's the distance from 0 on a number line. So if we had a location of 3, that would be absolute value of 3 would be 3 because it's a distance of 3 from 0. If we looked at -3, what's the distance from -3 to 0? The absolute value of -3 is 3 also. Here's what I'm trying to say with symbols now. The absolute value symbol is just 2 vertical lines. And it just illustrates the distance from 0 on a number line. Example. The absolute value of -3, like I said earlier, with the number line, that would be equal to 3. Same thing as the absolute value of +3. That will be equal to 3 also. That's showing with symbols. This is with the number line. Now, also one thing you can think about with the absolute value, it's the positive machine. Anything you put inside an absolute value will come out positive. Let's take a look at some more complicated ones now. Say we have a negative out front, the absolute value. Inside the absolute value, we have 5 minus 9. You're going to treat this like a situation where order of operations would take precedence, and you would have to do the absolute value of 5 minus 9 first, cover up that negative in front. So you're just going to do the absolute value of 5 minus 9. Do 5 minus 9 first, which is -4. So it looks like this. Negative absolute value of -4. Now you have to take the absolute value -4, so let's cover up the negative out front there so we don't get too confused. Absolute value -4 is 4. Now we can uncover that negative in front of it and give us a final answer, -4. The only time you're going to have a negative answer with absolute value is if you have a negative in front of it. If you didn't have that negative in front of it, our answer would have been +4. So just remember, every time you put anything inside the absolute value, it comes out positive. If there's a negative in front of it, it's like a -1 times that answer. Let's do one more. Say I gave you the absolute value of 9 minus 2 minus the absolute value of 2 minus 9. Now we're going to have to do each absolute value separately first. So the first one, absolute value of 9 minus 2, that will be 9 minus 2 is 7. Absolute value of 7 is 7. Then we have to do the other absolute value. Let's go ahead and bring this negative down. And now let's do the absolute value of 2 minus 9. That's 2 minus 9 is -7. Absolute value of -7 is 7. So it looks like now you have 7 minus 7, which is 0. Now that seems kind of simplistic. You might see one problem like that on the ACT exam, but they're probably going to give you something a little bit more complicated like what I'm going to show you now. It goes like this. If x is less than 0, then the absolute value of x is equivalent to which of the following? Choice A, x cubed. Choice B, -x squared. Choice C, 2x. Choice D, x. And choice E, negative x. Well, you're like looking at that, that's a very abstract kind of a problem with absolute value. I thought absolute value was easy. Well, here's what I would do in this situation is, you're given absolute value of x is less than 0. What does that mean? That means x has to be a negative number. So just think of a negative number, like x equals negative 1. So we're going to let x equal negative 1. And we're going to just plug numbers in and see what happens. So let's plug negative 1 into choice A. And ask ourselves, would that be the same answer if we were to plug negative 1 into the absolute value of x? So would that be equal to the absolute value of negative 1? Now we talked about it in our episode with our lesson with exponents. If you take a negative number, raise it to the odd power third, you're going to get negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1, which is negative 1. Is that equal to the absolute value of 1? No, it's not. So choice A is not going to work. So it's just like a trial and error situation, and just plug numbers in and see which would work. So we know the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. We've got to see which one is going to give us a positive 1 answer. The next one, this is negative, parentheses, negative 1 squared. Well, we have to do the power first. Negative 1 squared, that's positive 1. Still got that negative out front? You get a negative 1, that's not equal to positive 1. That's not equal to the absolute value of negative 1. So let's try C. Let's plug it in there. 2 times negative 1. Obviously, that's not going to give us the right answer either. Let's go to D. That would be negative 1 plugged into there. That's not equal to absolute value of negative 1, which is 1. Geez, I wonder what answer it's going to be. Well, it's going to be equal to the last one. Let me show you why. This is a negative negative x. That means negative parentheses negative 1 equals absolute value of negative 1. Now, I want to show you that. A negative times a negative is a positive. You get positive 1 equals positive 1. So choice E is the correct answer. Now I want to show absolute value as an actual function of x. Like we like to use the word f of x. I'm going to look at f of x equals the absolute value function of x, absolute value of x. This function can be written as a piecewise function. X, when x is greater than or equal to 0, negative x when x is less than 0. So, like the problem we did earlier, negative x would make sense. The absolute value of x is negative x when x is less than 0. So if you knew that fact, you wouldn't even have to plug the numbers in. Now let me explain why you can say absolute value of x, the function absolute value of x, can be written this way. Graphically, we know absolute value of x makes a v, and this one's centered at the origin. If you try to graph it, you're going to look at f of x equals. A lot of times we say y equals f of x. Y equals x. That's this equation of this line right here. And then you can look at it as y equals negative x. And these guys right here, x greater than 0 or x less than 0, those are your domains. So x greater than 0, you're going to have y equals x. That's this side. This is values of x greater than 0. To the left side of 0, when x is negative, you're going to get y equals negative x. I'm just trying to explain how and why you can write the absolute value of x as a function of x.